here again to sift through the source material you send us, pull out those crucial insights, and basically save you a whole lot of reading time. Today, we're really diving deep into something that's become, well, almost predictable across Elon Musk's companies.
Yeah, it's that revolving door for top executives, isn't it?
Exactly. It's this highly consistent kind of puzzling churn of senior people. We're talking Tesla, SpaceX, X, even Neuralink, and the Boring Company.
It's across the board.
Right. And the sources point to this steady stream, this like systemic exodus of the deputies,
Wow.
the people actually turning the big vision into, well, working stuff.
Yeah, the ones making it happen day to day.
And we've got this incredible list of recent departures. I mean, really staggering. Many were veterans, people with like a decade or more of deep, intimate knowledge.
Mm-hmm. That institutional memory just walking out.
So that's our mission today, right?
Yeah.
We need to figure out, is this constant high churn just, the price of admission for working with a visionary who's moving at light speed?
Or is it something more serious?
Or is it actually a critical vulnerability, something that could,
yeah.
threaten the whole empire long term?
That paradox is absolutely key here. It
Yeah.
really is. One or two people leaving, fine, that happens anywhere.
Yeah.
But when you look across all 5 big companies, yeah, the pattern is the story.
Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of set the scene for you, there's this quote from a former deputy that really nails it, I think, better than any corporate statement could.
Yeah.
They said, the one constant at all of his companies is how quickly he burns through deputies.
Wow. Burns through. That's potent.
It is, and it captures that feeling of intensity and maybe disposability.
And you use that word constant again. That feels important. This isn't just random people leaving, a few bad fits here and there.
No. It's systemic, it's multi-company, and it seems driven by the same core management approach, regardless of the industry.
So when you see the sheer number of really key people walking away, I mean, people who were there for 10 plus years, foundational figures,
Yeah.
then that whole idea of losing institutional knowledge, it stops being this like vague business school concept.
It becomes very real, a tangible operational risk.
Okay, before we get into the why people are leaving, can you give us a bit more sense of the scale? Like, who exactly are we talking about here? Some key examples.
Yeah, absolutely. And you almost have to start with Tesla, because those recent departures were, well, seismic.
Right, I remember hearing about those.
In the spring, you had Drew Baglino, the senior VP of Powertrain and Energy Engineering.
Okay, yeah, core tech guy.
Absolutely central. And Rohan Patel, the VP of Public Policy and Business Development, both gone simultaneously.
And these weren't new hires.
No, these were veterans, people who'd been shaping Tesla, almost since the beginning. Baglino especially, I mean, he was fundamental to the actual engineering success of the cars.
So you lose the main architect and the chief negotiator pretty much at the same time. That's huge.
It's a massive blow.
Yeah.
And that kind of loss, that intensity, it's not just happening in the car business, right?
No, you mentioned SpaceX too.
Far from it. Over at SpaceX, I mean, the stakes there are literally astronomical, right?
You could say that, yeah.
We recently saw Kiko Donchev leave. He was the vice president of launch.
VP of launch. Okay, that sounds critical.
It is. When you lose someone in that role, you're losing incredibly detailed operational knowledge.
Right.
Every system, every complexity needed to get, say, a Starship off the ground.
That's not knowledge you can just replace overnight.
Not even close. It's ingrained, learned through experience, through failures and successes. It's irreplaceable in the short term.
And then, okay, we have to talk about X, formerly Twitter. The turnover there has been, well, staggering is the word.
Oh, absolutely staggering. We all saw that initial wave, right? The C-suite basically wiped out right after the acquisition.
Yeah, very dramatic.
But it didn't stop there. The churn just kept going long after that initial takeover chaos. We've seen really critical roles leave since then. Head of safety,
right.
Head of brand safety. People heading for the exit, basically saying the environment, the culture, it just became unmanageable.
And you mentioned the other companies too. Neuralink, the Boring Company.
Yeah, I mean, it's less public, fewer headlines maybe, but you hear similar stories filtering out. Difficult environments, high churn.
So it really doesn't matter if it's cars, rockets, social media, brain chips, tunnels.
Doesn't seem to. The common factor is the management style, the mechanism at the very top. And it's producing pretty similar results across these wildly different fields.
Okay, so that forces the big question then. If the missions are so compelling, right, and people genuinely believe they're, changing the world.
Which many of them surely do, initially at least.
Why do they eventually hit a point where they decide, okay, the cost is just too high, and walk away.
Exactly. And our sources, looking at internal reports, exit interviews, that sort of thing, they kind of synthesize it down into four main drivers, four distinct reasons behind this huge executive exodus.
Okay, let's break those down. What's driver number one?
Driver one is probably the one most people have heard about, the relentless, hardcore work culture.
Right, the expectation of just superhuman effort
Yeah,
all the time.
pretty much. It's described as a culture of, like, perpetual crisis. High stakes, always on, designed almost to test your stress tolerance above everything else.
A burnout machine, I think you called it earlier.
That's the phrase used, yeah. A burnout machine. It's engineered to weed out anyone who isn't ready to live in a constant state of emergency. You're expected to be on 24/7.
And you hear those stories, right? The classic email at 2 a.m. needing an answer now.
Exactly. Not, a considered response tomorrow morning. An immediate solution is demanded. It's that kind of pressure.
But I always wonder about that. Is that pressure actually functional? I mean, how many truly brilliant breakthrough ideas happen because someone had to reply at 2 a.m.?
That's a great question.
Or is it more like a loyalty test?
Mm.
You prove your commitment by showing you'll sacrifice everything, including sleep.
The sources seem to lean more towards the latter, especially when you think about long-term retention. It definitely drives speed in the short term, no doubt. But that constant state of hyper-alertness, that pressure, it feeds directly into the second driver,
Understood.
a volatile and demanding leadership style.
Okay. So the work itself is relentless,
Yep.
and the way it's managed is also intense.
Intense is one word for it. Reports consistently describe the management style as brutally direct, often publicly critical.
Creating a culture of fear, essentially.
Yeah, a genuine, pervasive culture of fear and unpredictability. You don't know what might set things off.
And I've read descriptions where deputies feel like they have to be mind readers.
That comes up a lot. Like, you're expected to anticipate needs perfectly, deliver flawlessly, often with very little positive feedback.
And the consequences for not doing that?
Can be immediate and severe. We have multiple reports, multiple sources, detailing people being fired on the spot.
Just like that.
Just like that. For not meeting some exacting standard, or maybe even worse, for daring to disagree, suggesting an alternative approach, questioning a decision.
That sounds incredibly stressful. If
Yeah.
you're constantly worried that one misstep means you're out.
Exactly. Your focus inevitably shifts, doesn't it? From long-term, creative, strategic thinking
To just surviving the next meeting.
to short-term personal survival, yeah?
Wow. Okay. That sounds exhausting. Now, the third driver you mentioned is more structural. Something about anti-bureaucracy.
Yes. Driver 3 is about the structure itself, the single throat to choke philosophy.
Okay. Single throat to choke. Catchy. What does that mean in practice?
Well, it stems from Musk's well-known hatred of bureaucracy, of layers of management, endless meetings.
Which, in theory, sounds good, right? Flatten the structure, move faster.
That's the idea. Remove the middle managers, make one person directly accountable for a specific function or project. Force quick decisions, clear responsibility.
Yeah, okay. Makes sense on paper.
But the sources really highlight a serious, maybe unintended consequence. These individuals, they get immense pressure and accountability put on them.
Right, the single throat.
But often they have surprisingly limited actual authority to make the necessary decisions without getting constant approval from the top.
Ah. So they're responsible, but not fully empowered.
Precisely. So what happens? When something inevitably goes wrong, and things always go wrong in complex projects, they become the sole point of failure. They're the throat that gets choked.
Which just magnifies the personal risk again.
Massively. And this structural issue, it actually prevents those mid-level leaders from developing real independent decision-making capability. It creates bottlenecks right at the top, even while the company thinks it's moving super fast because it's flat.
So you flatten the organization, but you concentrate all the risk and fragility onto specific individuals.
You got it. Maximum responsibility, sometimes minimum autonomy. It's an impossible position for a deputy long-term.
Okay. And the final driver. This one's newer, you said?
Yeah, relatively new, but increasingly significant. The X factor, meaning the acquisition of Twitter, now X.
Ah, right. Adding another massive and very different company to the portfolio.
Exactly. And this has dramatically fractured the CEO's focus and time.
Which must have knock-on effects elsewhere.
It's become a critical issue. Since X joined the fold, the CEO's attention is now split across, 6 active demanding companies? And you can really feel the frustration, according to the sources, coming from deputies back at the core engineering companies. like Tesla and SpaceX.
Because they need that stable, long-term input.
They do. They're working on incredibly complex, long-horizon projects, building gigafactories, designing interplanetary
Right,
rockets.
not things you manage tweet by tweet.
Not at all. But instead, they're facing situations where critical decisions get delayed, strategic input is maybe inconsistent.
Right.
Why? Because the CEO is completely consumed managing a real-time, high-drama crisis on a social media platform.
The cognitive whiplash must be intense. Switching from, I don't know, Mars life support systems to content moderation policy?
Extreme. And that split focus impacts everything down the line. If you're a VP at Tesla trying to finalize a huge supply chain deal or pick a new factory location,
And you need the sign-off from the top.
but the person who needs to sign off is, busy dealing with an advertiser boycott on X or rethinking verification
Your
badges.
project stalls. You feel sidelined?
Exactly. You feel strategically marginalized and progress grinds to a halt. It adds another layer of frustration on top of the existing pressures.
Okay, so that's a powerful set of drivers.
Right.
The hardcore culture, the volatile leadership, the structural choke points, and now this split focus from X. We've definitely established the scale and the mechanisms.
Yeah, it paints a pretty clear picture.
So now we have to tackle that central tension, the paradox you mentioned right at the start. Is all this just the necessary evil, the cost you have to pay for genuine breakthrough innovation?
Yeah.
Or is it actually a serious weakness, a vulnerability that's going to catch up with the whole enterprise eventually?
And we should give the pro argument its proper weight, right?
Absolutely.
Because the proponents, they argue, and look, their track record gives them a strong case. They argue that this intense, high-pressure environment is necessary. It's what drives what they call insane innovation.
And they'd point to.
They'd point to SpaceX basically revolutionizing spaceflight with reusable rockets. They'd point to Tesla fundamentally changing the auto industry, forcing electrification on everyone.
Hard to argue with those results.
It is. They claim this system, this method, it works precisely because it filters out anyone who can't handle the brutal pace required to do things everyone else thinks is impossible.
It selects for a certain kind of resilience, maybe, or tolerance.
Perhaps. So that's a very compelling argument. If your goal isn't just incremental improvement, but revolutionary speed and impact, maybe stability and comfort are luxuries you can't afford.
Okay, but what's the flip side? What's the long-term cost of running this perpetual motion, high burnout machine?
The counterargument really zeroes in on the catastrophic brain drain.
The loss of that deep knowledge we talked about.
Exactly. You simply cannot hire a new person, no matter how brilliant they are on paper, and have them instantly replace a decade's worth of hard-won, intimate, often unwritten knowledge.
Right, the stuff that's not in any manual.
That's where the real cost of this instability hits home. When a key deputy, like, say, Pico Donchev, walks away from SpaceX,
Yeah.
he doesn't just leave an empty VP slot. He takes with him the tribal knowledge. Every lesson learned from every Starship test that went wrong, every subtle engineering fix, every workaround for a problem that maybe never even got formally documented.
It's the unwritten history of what works, and maybe more importantly, what doesn't work.
Precisely. Losing that deep experiential memory absolutely slows down progress. It makes you much more likely to repeat costly mistakes.
So losing a deputy isn't just filling a role, it's like erasing a chunk of the company's memory.
That's a good way to put it. A gap in corporate memory. And that leads straight into the next big concern, operational risk.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you have constant high-level churn, who is ensuring consistency? Who's making sure safety protocols are rigorously followed day in, day out? Who's managing the incredibly complex web of regulatory compliance?
Especially in businesses like SpaceX or even Tesla Autopilot.
Exactly. Places where one tiny error, one lapse in procedure can have spectacular, incredibly public, and potentially tragic consequences.
You need unwavering stability and consistency at the top for that stuff.
You absolutely do. High churn in leadership makes that kind of rock-solid consistency almost impossible to maintain over the long haul.
Okay, that makes sense. And finally, you mentioned investors are noticing this.
Yes, the instability hasn't gone unnoticed. It's translating into investor nerves and corporate governance concerns.
So Wall Street is watching the revolving door.
Institutional investors definitely are. They're starting to ask some tough but necessary questions about key man risk.
Meaning the over-reliance on just one person.
Exactly. The dependence on a single individual, Musk, for all critical decisions, all strategic direction. If the only constant across this whole empire is that the deputies don't stick around.
Then who takes over if something happens? Who ensures continuity?
The whole question of succession planning becomes really acute, really urgent. And it suggests the corporate governance, the internal structures, they haven't really matured beyond that initial startup phase, despite the massive scale now.
And that lack of institutional resilience, that makes serious money nervous.
It does. Capital likes predictability or at least manageable risk. Constant executive churn feels like unmanaged risk.
So, wrapping this all together, this whole situation feels like a really powerful case study.
It really is a cautionary one, perhaps, about the limits of a certain kind of leadership model. You know, the one we sometimes romanticize, the tyrannical genius who pushes people beyond all limits.
Right. The ends justify the means kind of thing.
And look, that style can achieve incredible things. Short-term breakthroughs, absolutely. The track record proves it.
But
But it's a system that seems to consume its own fuel. And that fuel is the incredibly talented, dedicated deputies it attracts and then burns through at this alarming rate.
which forces you to ask.
Can this management style actually build institutions that are built to last for generations? Or does it only build companies that are perpetually focused on just surviving the next crisis, hitting the next impossible deadline?
That really is the core question, isn't it? And maybe the essential takeaway for you listening to this. The big question looming over Tesla, SpaceX, X, all of them.
Hmm.
It's not just about the next rocket launch or the next Cybertruck delivery number.
No, it's deeper than that.
It's whether this intense cult of personality that defines these companies today can somehow evolve. Can it transform into a culture of more stable, more resilient leadership, one that can actually attract and retain top talent for the long haul?
Because if it can't,
Because if this constant, sustained executive exodus keeps going, that brain drain we talked about, the loss of memory and expertise, it feels almost inevitable that it will start to seriously erode the foundations, the operational strength, the intellectual core of these companies that really are changing the world.
a fascinating high-stakes situation to watch.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the structural pressures inside one of the world's most watched and maybe most volatile corporate empires.